One day during my sophomore year, the dining hall brought out flank steak. Having just gotten back from the gym, I happily devoured 3 plates of meat without so much as a second thought. Later that night, long after I was supposed to have gone to sleep, I found myself writhing at a shooting pain in my stomach. Hobbling my way to the dorm bathroom, I proceeded to empty the contents of my stomach as well as all of the rest of the liquids in my body. The dining hall steak had just given me the worst bout of food poisoning I've ever had the displeasure of experiencing. I spent the next 3 days laying in bed, drifting in and out of consciousness, only getting up to empty out all of the liquids I managed to force down. By the end of the affair, I'd lost 8 pounds and, more importantly, my dignity. Perhaps what's worse than the food poisoning itself is the fact that this wasn't an isolated incident. Across the 3 years I was forced to eat dining hall slop, I've personally gotten food poisoning 4 times and counted at least 16 major incidents among my friends. From the aforementioned diarrhea-inducing steaks, to creamy fish sticks, to hockey puck consistency burger patties, to medium rare chicken, I've seen and been unfortunate enough to eat almost all of it. Some of my friends have fared even worse than I have, with one friend discovering a dead cockroach in her nuggets, and another having such crippling stomach pains after eating a beef and rice bowl that he went pescatarian for 3 years. So today, I'll be telling you what happens when your school outsources their cafeteria services to the lowest possible bidder, whose staff's sole work experience in the kitchen consists of Papa's Pizzeria. We can start the food safety violations by talking about sanitation in the dining hall, or rather, the complete and utter lack thereof. It never got to the level of Burger King foot lettuce, but I saw cooks routinely raw dogging all types of ingredients, from cooked hot dogs to raw chicken to supposedly fresh fruits. If they did by some miracle wear gloves, they'd keep the same pair of gloves on through the entirety of their service, even if they switched stations. Personally, I suspect this is how I got sick from the flank steak by inadvertently ingesting raw chicken juices, as my symptoms were pretty close to a bad case of salmonella poisoning. It was also pretty routine to find all types of hairs in your food, since cooks would wear baseball caps or nothing at all in place of their hair nets. I distinctly remember watching cooks scratch their heads and, in the same motion, go back to marinating raw chicken. And while all of this is pretty nasty, there are a couple of incidents that stand out in particular to me. The first was the day that a student cut into their grilled chicken only to find a rusty screw. When she brought this up to the cook's attention, the manager came in, promptly threw away all of the chicken on service at that moment, and told everyone to get back to work. This is pretty insane that they just try and sweep the whole thing under the rug, and if it hadn't been for the student taking pictures of the offending piece of poultry themselves, we would have had no record of the incident since the dining hall staff never apologized. Another time, a student noticed that the containers the staff were using to serve supposedly freshly squeezed juice were labeled food waste only. Feeling sick, he brought this incident up to one of the deans. Within the day, the juice was gone without so much as an explanation, much less an apology or an acknowledgement of guilt. On another occasion, I was eating dinner when I noticed the dining room had gotten a bit dimmer. I looked up just in time to see the burger grill ablaze and the cook standing dumbfounded at the conflagration in front of him. Not a minute later, the smoke alarm went off and we were all evacuated, but I remember turning around and seeing the cook gormlessly stare at his supervisor across the floor while the burgers were scorched into charcoal behind him. But the cooks weren't just trying to put students in the hospital. Sometimes they would turn their sights on each other. One time, I saw a cook stumble out of the dining hall, brace herself against her knees, and vomit up at least a liter of brown-green fluid into the flower bed before turning around and immediately going back. Last, but certainly not least, was when a couple of cooks decided to turn the dining room into an MMA hexagon and beat each other up so badly that one of them had to go to the hospital when the police eventually showed up to break them up. Perhaps they misunderstood what the manager meant when he said that they'd be having beef for dinner that night. I genuinely think that you could have gotten more competent and less psychotic staff by hiring from work at a pizza place, and I'm sure that if it wasn't for child labor laws, my school would have hired these laborers in an instant. The cooks weren't the only problem, however. As blindingly incompetent as they were, they also weren't exactly given much to work with. To riff off of the popular saying, there's only so much you can deep fry a turd before students notice they're eating shit. It was pretty routine to find all sorts of health code violations in both the cooked and uncooked sections. Almost every single item in the salad bar had some degree of freezer burn, to the point where it was a 50-50 gamble if you were eating Caesar salad or zesty ice cubes with a side of stale croutons. Fruits were similarly bad. They were displayed in these white trays to make them look more appetizing, but this often had the opposite effect. Against the sterile white background, it was easy to see a layer of brown and black dirt forming at the bottom of the trays from the cooks failing to even wash the fruits. Your best bet was fruits with skins like oranges and apples, but these weren't a guarantee either. I remember one time I went to pick up an apple only to notice that it was no longer solid. Not solid? What do you mean, Jeff? What I mean is that the apple was so rotten the inside had turned into this disgusting slime juice, and the only thing holding the apple together was its horribly wrinkled skin. It was effectively a rotten apple water balloon grenade thing, just waiting for some unfortunate bastard to pick it up and explode in their hand, showering them and everyone else in a 1-meter radius with a biohazard spray. Although not in the dining halls, I suppose I should also mention the water fountains. Early into my sophomore year, I remember trudging over to the water fountain at like 2 a.m. after slugging through another multi-hour quantum mechanics derivation. After walking back to my room, I took a sip of the water and immediately spat it out. Turning on my light, the color drained out of my face as I saw thick, milky white fluid sloshing around in my water bottle. I threw the remainder out of my window immediately, but curiosity got the better of me and I went back to the water fountain to make sure that was the culprit. Sure enough, as soon as I depressed the button, a stream of opaque white liquid came out. I guess not being content with inviting minors to their houses after hours, the deans decided to skip the formalities and just start cooling directly into our water supply. Now, there might not be anything you can do about the deans violating the security of your water supply, but that shouldn't stop you from protecting yourself online. Thanks to the sponsor of this video, NordVPN, you can use my link to do just that with the fastest VPN on the planet. There are tons of reasons to use a VPN. Maybe you don't want bad actors to spy on your internet traffic. Maybe you want to access online content that's not available in your specific region of the world. Or maybe you just don't want people in your online game to send your IP address when they lose and inevitably rage. A VPN can solve all of these problems, but NordVPN even goes a step further to keep you safe online. Their new threat protection feature can scan for both malicious links online and malicious files on your own computer, which can potentially save you from having to explain to the bank that the $10,000 charge on your account was because you clicked a free Robux phishing link. So, to get NordVPN's 2-year plan and 4 months extra, visit my link in the description of this video and the pinned comment. This trial period is risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Thanks again to Nord for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to the food poisoning. Now, it's a well-documented fact that the cleaner your environment, the better people tend to behave. It should thus come as no surprise that both the staff and students eating and working in these disgusting dining halls were close to manic. Students became kleptomaniacs, myself included to some degree. I've seen apartments where all of the plates and cutlery had come straight from the dining halls. Maybe this is why in my 3 years of being forced to eat there, I can count on 2 hands the number of times they actually had metal forks available. Oh, did I mention that if you lived on campus, you had to buy the dining plan even if you lived on an on-campus apartment with a kitchen? In spite of the ridiculous cost that works out to something like $20 per meal, there were some small benefits to this scheme. The dining hall left out vegetables and fruits in displays in front of most of the food stations. Ironically enough, these were usually fresher than the stuff they'd actually serve you, so I made a habit of yoinking them whenever I didn't want to go buy groceries. I started by taking a bell pepper here and a potato there, but it eventually escalated to the point where I was filling my backpack with onions and my roommates were leaving with entire pineapples and watermelons. This became particularly handy when the freshmen started to hang out in the stairwell next to our apartment in the early hours of the morning, as we just chuck whatever we had on hand at them from 10 floors up. Anyways, people like to steal stuff. I saw one kid steal an entire cake, another stole a baking tray of cookies, another ducked into the kitchen and ran off with a cutting board larger than his torso. Yet another broke into the dining halls after hours and stole so many cases of frozen chicken that the school filed a police report. By far the most insane thing I saw, however, was when someone ran off with a waffle maker. Like, what is he even going to do with it? He doesn't have any of the waffle mix in his dorm, presumably, so unless he wants to come back and fill his Stanley up with mix every day, he just stole it for the love of the game. Naturally, this put the dining hall staff in a bad mood. Being unable to catch the actual perpetrators, they usually took their anger out on the rest of the student body who happened to be so unfortunate as to enter the dining hall at the wrong time. I remember one time when I entered the dining hall and found nobody at the check-in desk. I figured it wouldn't be a big deal if I just tapped my card and went in, but after doing exactly this, I heard the floor crack behind me. An eldritch body horror with no visible limbs nor means of self-propulsion undulated towards me, speaking to me by vibrating its massive jaws.
Are you stupid? You have to check in with me if you want food. I'm gonna get you in trouble with your dean.
not being in the mood to negotiate with this abnormally large amoeba that looked more interested in consuming me through phagocytosis than it did in actually enforcing this inane rule, I responded, "Why don't you try and catch me, big boy?" Taking advantage of his eye spot's limited depth perception, I disappeared into the mob of students and, after taking off my jacket and stuffing it into my backpack, I ate my sad little dinner of grilled chicken and lettuce as usual. I hope you enjoyed, as much as you could, these selected dining hall stories. Sorry if any of you were planning to watch this while you ate. I imagine that I probably ruined your appetite. There's a couple of random tidbits that I wasn't able to include here in this grand saga, like the kid who eats sunflower seeds and raw bell peppers for every meal, the time someone threw out a bag of mulch in the dining hall bathroom, the time I found someone's shit-stained boxers in the toilet, the time I accidentally ripped the handle off of one of the fridges, the time they served something called margarita pizza and was actually just a normal pizza with a single sad tomato slice in the middle, or the time the staff accidentally served normal chicken nuggets in the vegan section. But I think I got most of the broad strokes. Actually, I forgot one thing. There was this one time someone set up a stall outside of the dining hall serving something called Hugh milk, which apparently is like milk from humans, meant for human consumption. I really hope that this was some sort of like vegan advocacy thing, but we have enough freaks at our school that I'm pretty sure there'd be a sizable population for this stuff. Anyways, I'm not exactly a culinary expert myself. I mean, I ate 3-week-old boiled eggs, but after living off campus, I've had to spend a lot less time shitting my guts out. Funny how that works, isn't it? Remember to like and sub. I'll see you next time.